You see, the reason most women fail when they try to ignore a man is because they do it impulsively, emotionally, and without strategy. It's not real detachment, it's a reaction. And that reaction, ironically, still gives him power. But when you understand the psychology behind withdrawal, when you begin to master silence, not as avoidance, but as presence, that's when everything changes. That's when he starts to chase, not because you manipulated him, but because you disrupted a pattern he subconsciously depends on. Men are biologically wired to respond to challenge. In evolutionary psychology, the concept of pursuit and reward is embedded deeply in the male psyche. What is easily available gets filed under low effort, low value. What he must work for or figure out triggers a cognitive tension. The same tension we feel when we're missing a puzzle piece or when a story ends on a cliffhanger. We become obsessed not with what we understand, but with what we almost understand. That's the space you want to live in. Somewhere just out of reach. Silence, used the right way, is not passive. It's not ghosting. It's not a tantrum. It's a deliberate act of stepping back so he can feel the space you used to fill. You're not disappearing. You're creating contrast. You're removing your emotional availability so he can recognize the void it leaves. And the human brain, especially the male brain, is not built to ignore voids. It's built to solve them. What happens when you stop texting, stop initiating, stop performing emotional labor for two? At first, he may feel relief, especially if he's been taking your presence for granted, but that relief is fleeting. The silence starts to echo, and in that echo, something primal kicks in. The need to know, to fix, to pursue. This isn't just romantic psychology, it's neuroscience. Dopamine, the chemical of desire, doesn't spike when we receive something. It spikes in anticipation of receiving something. When he knows exactly how you respond, exactly when you'll reach out, there is no anticipation, no tension, no chase. But when you go silent, when you stop feeding his emotional appetite, dopamine levels start to rise. His brain associates your absence with the need for pursuit, not your presence with the comfort of having already won. But I want to be very clear. This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about being hard to forget. It's about knowing your value so deeply that your silence speaks louder than your words. Because when a woman is when she isn't scrambling for reassurance, when she can hold her own space with grace and strength, she becomes unforgettable. Her silence becomes haunting, not because it's cruel, but because it's unfamiliar. Men are not used to women who don't over-explain, overgive, or overstay. And here's the paradox. The less you react, the more he reflects. The less you chase, the more he questions. Not because you're punishing him, but because you've broken a loop. You've interrupted his certainty. And certainty is the enemy of desire. So, if you're going to ignore a man, do it from a place of deep self-respect, not resentment. Let your silence be a mirror, not a weapon. Let it show him not just what you won't tolerate, but who you are without needing to prove it. In the end, silence is not absence, it's presence, amplified. And when used correctly, it doesn't push him away, it pulls him in, like gravity. There's something quietly revolutionary about not reacting, especially when everything inside you is wired to respond, to explain, to defend, to seek resolution. But when it comes to attraction, especially in romantic dynamics with men, the most magnetic energy you can cultivate is emotional neutrality. Not coldness, not passive aggression, but a firm, calm indifference that says, I am not moved by your chaos. Why is this so powerful? Because men, like most of us, operate in patterns. And if he's used to a woman reacting to every late reply, every shift in tone, every inconsistency, then your non-reaction breaks the cycle. It interrupts the script. And in that interruption, he's forced to confront something unexpected, his own impact, his own behavior, most importantly, his own feelings. When you stop reacting, you take yourself out of his emotional loop. You no longer exist as a mirror for his ego. He can't feed off your frustration or lean into your affection for quick validation. And that absence of response, that emotional stillness, it creates discomfort. But here's the twist. That discomfort doesn't repel him. It draws him in. Philosophically, we're drawn to what we can't easily define. The known is safe, but the unknown is captivating. When you react predictably, you become a known quantity. He places you in a box. She always texts back. She always forgives. She always tries to fix things. But when you stop reacting, that identity dissolves. Suddenly, he doesn't know where he stands. He doesn't know what you're thinking. And that uncertainty, that gap in the narrative, creates desire. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called variable reward. The idea that we become more addicted to something when we can't predict the outcome. This is why people get hooked on slot machines. And yes, in a strange way, romantic uncertainty can produce the same neurological effect. When you stop giving him predictable emotional responses, he starts chasing the next hit, not because you're playing games, but because you've removed the guarantee. But let's be clear, this only works when your indifference is real, when it comes from genuine emotional maturity, not suppressed anger, not performative detachment. You're not trying to teach him a lesson. You're showing by your silence that your self-worth is not up for negotiation, that his approval is not your currency. And that's the kind of energy men remember, not because it's flashy, but because it's rare. Indifference, in this context, is not a lack of feeling. It's the refusal to betray your peace just to feel seen. It's the discipline to sit with discomfort rather than rush to reattach. And ironically, it's in that quiet refusal to engage that you become most powerful. Because you're no longer operating from need, you're standing in choice. You see, the right kind of ignoring isn't loud, it's subtle. It's when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop proving your worth, when you no longer participate in conversations that only exist to feed someone else's sense of control. That's when he feels the shift. That's when you stop being accessible and start being valuable. And value in every domain, romantic, social, economic, is always tied to scarcity. The more available you are emotionally, the less value he places on your presence. But when you become a little more measured, a little more intentional, when your energy becomes something he has to earn, he starts paying attention. So if you want to know the fastest way to shift the power dynamic, stop reacting, stop filling the space, stop softening the edges. Your stillness will speak for you. Because sometimes the most attractive thing a woman can do is nothing at all. Here's something most people never tell you. It's not your presence that makes a man value you. It's the threat of your absence. And not just physical absence, but emotional withdrawal. The moment a man senses that your attention, your warmth, your willingness to be emotionally available is no longer guaranteed, something in him wakes up. It's subtle but powerful. He starts to feel the weight of what he's been taking for granted. We often assume that love is built through connection, through closeness, through showing up. And yes, those things matter. But desire? Desire thrives in space, in distance, in the awareness that you might not always be there. This isn't about making him feel abundant. It's about allowing him to feel the cost of losing you, not because you said it, but because he experienced it. This is the part most women struggle with, letting a man feel your absence without rushing to comfort his discomfort. There is a natural instinct to explain, to clarify, to make sure he knows you're still there, still interested, still reachable. But when you do that too soon, you interrupt the very tension that makes him reflect. You cut short the emotional hunger that fuels pursuit. What men often won't admit is that they are deeply impacted by contrast. When something they once had constant access to is no longer freely available, the brain rewires how it perceives value. It begins to idealize, to long, to chase, because now the emotional experience you once gave him without condition has become a memory he has to work to recreate. And that shift from receiving to earning is everything. There's a kind of internal authority that comes with being willing to let someone feel the loss of you. Not in anger, not in punishment, but in truth, in maturity. You are not teaching him a lesson. You are honoring a boundary. You are allowing reality to speak louder than your words. And reality is simple. No one keeps what they don't value, and no one values what is always available, always forgiving, always ready to overextend. When you step back, not as a game, but as a consequence of being emotionally self-respecting, you create a vacuum, and that vacuum invites choice. He can either rise to meet the standard of your energy, or he can let it go. But either way, you stop negotiating with potential. You stop convincing someone to want what they don't recognize is valuable. The most powerful shift happens when you no longer fear losing a man who isn't showing up fully. You're not trying to prove you're enough. You already know that you are. And when you know that, your absence becomes as meaningful as your presence. Your silence becomes as telling as your words. Because now you're not asking to be chosen. You're letting him decide if he's capable of choosing someone like you. Someone whole, someone self-possessed, someone who doesn't chase validation, but attracts respect. Loss is a teacher, and when you allow someone to feel what life is like without your emotional labor, your laughter, your softness, your insight, you're not being cruel, you're giving them a mirror. And what they see in that mirror is not just who you are, but what they risk losing if they don't show up differently. So don't be afraid to create that space. Don't be afraid to pull back, not to manipulate, but to realign. Sometimes the only way to remind a man what he had is to take it away, quietly, without drama, without warning, just with truth. Let him feel the loss, because that's where the chase begins. By the time he comes back, and he often will, you've already redefined the dynamic. The silence has spoken. The absence has done its work. Now the question isn't if he'll return, but how you will respond when he does. And this is where many women make the mistake of collapsing the boundary they spend so much time and emotional strength building. They confuse his return with transformation, his curiosity with commitment, and they hand access back without requiring anything new. But let's be honest. Returning doesn't mean changing. A man can miss you and still not be ready to rise to your level. He can feel the loss of your presence without truly understanding the value of your essence. So when he reaches out, when he comes knocking on the emotional door you closed, the work isn't to rush back into his arms. The work is to pause, to assess, to let your energy become earned again, not offered on credit. Because when you ignore a man the right way, you aren't just teaching him a lesson, you're retraining yourself. You're shifting from seeking approval to standing in discernment. You're no longer driven by the hope that he'll choose you. You're now curious about whether he even deserves access to you in this new version of yourself. Think of it like this. Your silence created space. Your stillness created contrast. Now your re-entry must reflect your evolution. If you walk back into the same dynamic with the same patterns, then nothing has changed, only the distance between your last conversation and this one. But if you come back with self-awareness, clarity, and new standards, he'll feel the difference instantly. Not because you say anything loud or dramatic, but because your energy is no longer cheap. Reinforcing your value doesn't mean being guarded or cold. It means being selective. It means understanding that the man who truly wants you will not only chase but adjust. He won't just come back with apologies or charm. He'll come back with effort, with intention, with the willingness to meet you on your level, not pull you back into his. And this is where you begin to make him work for your access, not out of revenge, but out of respect for your time, for your emotional bandwidth, because love is not a reward for persistence. It's a responsibility. If he wants to be close to you again, let him earn it. Let him show, through consistent action, that he understands what you bring and what it takes to be with someone like you. You're not asking for too much when you raise your standards. You're simply refusing to settle for too little. You're no longer impressed by breadcrumbs. You want the whole loaf, or nothing at all. And when he sees that you're not afraid to walk away, not out of fear, but out of self-trust, it creates a new dynamic, one rooted not in anxiety or neediness, but in quiet strength. So, don't rush the reunion. Don't romanticize the return. Observe, evaluate. Let him reveal who he is now that he's tasted life without your warmth. And most of all, let him feel that your love is not automatic anymore. It's earned, intentional, sacred. Because at the end of the day, true power isn't in getting him back. It's in knowing that you never needed to lose yourself to keep him in the first place.